And thank you everyone for joining us. On today's show, we want to talk about something called the Rule of 100. And Matt, what is the Rule of 100?
So Melissa, those that follow us here on the show know that we talk about this a lot, but I think it's good to bring it up again because it's such a core principle to what our beliefs are at the firm. So basically what the Rule of 100 means, or what it says, is whatever your age is currently, that's the percentage of your retirement assets or nest egg, whatever you want to refer to it as, that should be in a safer position, meaning you can't lose any money on it. And then the difference between your age and the number 100 is the percentage of your liquid retirement nest egg or assets that could be at risk in the market, and things like stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. But I always stress only if you're comfortable with taking that risk. Doesn't mean that you have to take it. But most people today are kind of considering themselves to be moderate investors. You know, most people as they get closer into retirement don't consider themselves aggressive, and some will consider themselves conservative, but the majority of the population will refer to themselves as moderate. So if you want to have a moderate portfolio, if you're within 10 years of retirement, we always recommend that you follow the Rule of 100. So again, as an example, 60-year-old individual should have about 60% of their nest egg safe, meaning they can't lose anything, no more than 40% at risk in the market, like in things like stocks, bonds, and mutual funds.
Do you always need that mixture of stocks, bonds?
Well, you know, if you think about it, the old 60-40 rule is what we always used to hear. And 20 years ago, meaning 60% bonds, 40% stocks if you're retired, or vice versa. But I mean, if you think about it, 18, 20 years ago, stocks were averaging, I think, like 14% per year, and then bonds were averaging 6%.
Yeah.
And I mean, at that time, the safe withdrawal rate, I think AARP put out that study, and the safe withdrawal rate was 4 to 5%. And what that means is let's say you have $1 million in your portfolio. Well, that withdrawal rate says you could pull out somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 a year, and statistically speaking, you shouldn't run out of money.
Okay.
Well, things have changed. I mean, this is not the same market as it was back in the 90s and 2000. I think stocks are now averaging like 8%, and then bonds are averaging around 3%.
Now they're way down there. Aren't they? Yes.
Yeah. So that safe withdrawal rate of 4 to 5 that it used to be is now more like 2 to 3%. So put that into perspective. If you have $1 million in your portfolio, that means you can safely withdraw $20,000 to $30,000 if you're still using that same 60-40 split that used to work. Now,
And are people saying I can't live on that? 2 to 3?
absolutely,
Yeah.
They've saved their whole life. They have $1 million. $20,000 a year is probably not going to do it for them.
So
Right.
this is a good point that Dustin's making, that some of the old generic rules that we used to follow in the past, when it came to retirement planning, it's just not working anymore. You know, I don't know anybody that's worked their whole lives to accumulate $1 million that, you know, wants $1,500 a month or $2,000 a month of income. So that's why I think it's so important to follow things like our Rule of 100. Now, when you look at the safe portion of the money, so again, as an example, somebody 60 years old would want to have about 60% of their money safe. And I always stress, when we start talking about this, you do not have to hit these percentages exactly, okay?
Right.
You know, being close to it is what we're talking about. 5 or 10 percentage points, one way or the other is fine. But the money that's supposed to be safe doesn't mean that it's in the bank, you know, getting 1% return or something of that nature. You can still have safety, but still get reasonable returns in the 6, 7, 8% range on average, possibly. So that's what we mean by safety. And then if 6, 7, 8%, you know, doesn't sound exciting enough for you, then that's where following the Rule of 100 would allow you to have some money, you know, chasing a higher return. You know, investing in things that are a little more exotic or maybe a little more exciting. But when you follow a rule like this, if we run into another market correction or another 2008 or a September 11th or something of that nature, and it's a few months or a few weeks before you're supposed to retire, then you're not going to get hurt nearly as bad as what we saw individuals during those time periods where they had the majority, if not all, of their money invested in stocks and bonds.
What I keep hearing you both say, which I think is so interesting, is that 10 years out from retirement is when you really need to start doing this. You know, I know so many people 2 years out from retirement is when they really start. What's the benefit of 10 years out?
Well, just to make sure that what you're doing is still what the best tool is. I mean, and like, we talk about occasionally is doing an in-service rollover, or maybe there's some options that are now available to you that are going to fit your goals a little better than maybe your 401k or something like that.
The other thing, Melissa, that we always use this 10-year time frame is because if you need to adjust some things, like Dustin was just talking about, well, those changes aren't going to happen overnight. We can get it done in 2 years if we have to. We can probably get it done in 2 months if we have to. That's not ideal, though. You know, it's better to have a longer time frame to work on those things. And really, the biggest issue that I see in helping individuals over the 20 years I've been helping them is the fact that when we lose money in the stock market, on average, it's going to take us 7 years to recover from that market drop.
Is that what it took about for the correction, the big 2008?
2008 was right at about 8 years.
8 years.
So 7 years is the average. So some are longer, some are shorter. The longest it's ever taken is 18 years to fully recover. But you know, sometimes it's just a few years. But if we just go with the average of 7 years, well, that's why it's so important that as you get to within 10 years of retirement, you start looking at this and you start adjusting things, because if you wait till you're 2 years out and we see a severe correction, more than likely you're going to go into retirement. You won't even have gotten back to even.
Or instead of 2 years out, now you're 10 years out again.
Now you got to
Work longer
to make up.
And so I'm sure both of you look at portfolios that people bring in 2 years out, 10 years out, and you see where they could have saved money for this nest egg of theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we see it on just about every client that comes in. There's some things that you could potentially tweak to make it a little bit maybe more conservative, but still accomplish the rates of return that they're looking to.
And a great starting point with all of that is to try and make sure that you're adhering to the rule of 100. And a lot of times individuals come into the office, they don't necessarily understand the rule of 100.
Yeah.
They don't know if their portfolio is set up properly, and that's where, of course, we're here to help if they need to call into the office. And we can take a look at their portfolio and see how they're doing.
All right, thank you both very much. If you want to know more about the rule of 100, you can visit swdgroup.com. And stay tuned for more Strategic Wealth with Matt Dickin right after the break.